Right now in aviation, as much as we want to introduce digital solutions, people are still used to working in their old way of communication. Sometimes when the aircraft is in really critical conditions, phone calls are faster than ordering parts online. And you have to admit that, I think.
In this podcast, I'm joined by Manami Izawa, product design lead at one of the most prestigious aircraft manufacturers, Bombardier. Manami grew up in Japan and studied linguistics and education before she decided to move to Canada to study graphic design. Now as a product design lead, she oversees Bombardier's aviation supply chain. Welcome, Manami Izawa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Robert.
Let's start with the first question. The aviation industry isn't the most obvious choice for most product designers. People typically gravitate towards tech, e-commerce, fintech. What attracted you to work at Bombardier over those other industries?
I'm from Japan, but for studying, I decided to move to Montreal in Canada. And as I was doing my studying in design at a university, I noticed that the Bombardier has been always close to the local community. And a lot of my alumni, they work there as interns, or after graduating, they continue working as an engineer or as a business analyst. That's how I knew about the company. And also, I think I wanted to work for a complex and industry-specific problem solving. Yeah, so I was curious to know what it's like to solve those real problems, like those problems which you can't go by assumptions.
Bombardier itself is not a very familiar name. It's not that known like Boeing or Airbus. Could you explain a little bit what they do besides the fact that they create aircrafts?
So they create private jets, business jets. But after producing those aircrafts, that's not the end of the business. We also take care of the customers' aircrafts. Whenever they have problems with the aircraft parts like engines, or if there's any faults, issues, and they cannot fly their planes, that's when they can come into our service centers. Or if they decide to go to other service centers, then they can still purchase our parts. So maintenance is another big sector in our business area.
Could you explain the role of UX in Bombardier's aviation supply chain?
Yeah, so I'm working in a team where we sell aircraft parts to the customers for maintenance purposes. And our digital product is an e-commerce website. It's like Amazon, but for aircraft parts. And I'm overseeing the user journey of the users. When they'll come into the platform to find the parts, they can purchase online and receive their orders. To understand the user journey, it's similar to how like other product design teams usually work on their projects. We begin by understanding the user needs and desires, and then we also collaborate with the business team to gather their input, right? Like we also have to consider the business requirements and if there's any restrictions as well. And then that's followed by the ideation phase, user testing, iterations, and then ultimately the product release. And then we will repeat that cycle.
You were talking about your users. Who are your users?
Yeah, so the users are mostly the aircraft maintenance workers. They are employed either at large maintenance service centers, or it could be a small family-owned businesses that they happen to have their own private jets. And this one maintenance worker could be responsible with everything about having aircraft. And most of these maintenance workers are older, typically in their 40s or even beyond that. They're working on those like specific aircraft, right? The customers are coming in with their airplanes having issues, so the maintenance workers are there to inspect what's actually happening. And then they will identify that, maybe this specific gear needs to be changed. And that's when they decide to come to Bombardier and order parts. So they can come into our platform, search for the parts. But the difference between those traditional e-commerce website versus ours is that the users already know which specific parts to purchase. So they're not looking for or trying to compare with other brands or different colors or things like that. So they're coming in with this specific part numbers, and they will type in the part numbers, trying to see if there's any stock at a certain location that's easily accessible to them. Once they find that the stock is there, they can also check the warranty if the part is covered by our Bombardier's warranty program. And then they can order those parts. And after that, the process is pretty similar to how the e-commerce website runs. They can track their orders online as well.
What are common pain points in that user journey?
The first thing that came up to my mind is that because of the nature of the aviation, our business is very careful with who to sell those parts. So when I say who, not anyone can easily access our website and then purchase parts. Especially it's because of the current state of the world. The government decide that these countries have to be sanctioned and we have to follow those regulations. So that's why we have this kind of, I would say, almost like a blockers for the users to make them stop and wait until our customer support team can verify and make sure that those users are safe and they don't fall into those criteria of the government wanting to sanction. But we, as a product team, we try to make it as smooth as possible. For example, with this kind of blockers, we will make it into as part of the onboarding process so that they won't be surprised at the end when they get to the checkout, and then they will realize that not any other like random shipping addresses cannot be added or things like that.
The aviation supply chain is one of the most time-pressured industries globally. How much time do your stakeholders allocate to let you and your team come up with solutions?
Yes, we always work very tightly, closely with the customer support team. That team is the ones who is always up to date with the aviation regulations. And I'm gonna use the same example as the shipping address because it used to be like a free text input field for the users that whatever the new addresses, people were able to type in and then submit the order request. But then when this was mentioned by someone in our company, they were very stressed out about it, and we had to act on it right away. So we only had about like 1 week to change the input field into a drop-down menu. So the addresses that were already registered, people were able to select, but then to add a new address, they had to be approved by the customer support team in advance. We only had 1 week for the short-term solution. So for the long-term solutions, the team is like open overall, but there are times we have to act very quickly. And in this example, it was about 1 week from like discussing and then implementing the solution.
I want to go back to your user and specifically the software that they're using. What I've learned is that people who are responsible for maintaining those aircrafts, that they already work with a wide range of software tools. And I was wondering, how do you ensure that you don't disrupt the workflow of your customers with your platform?
Yes, there are so many softwares, applications related to the aviation out there. So it's a challenge. But also we have to be mindful of, I guess, try not to make or come up with too many softwares applications, because I noticed it's very easy for one business to have a lot of initiatives. So that's something we should all keep in mind whenever you are trying to start a new initiative. Where does that fall into? What does it even called? That's another thing. A lot of applications have similar names across different industries or even within the same industry. So naming is something else. And then we should also try to make sure that we have user interviews, user testings, and never go with assumptions, because the one software or application that you think it's very valuable might not be the case for the actual users because they are already using something else. But maybe your business is not aware of that. So the way how we can figure it out is by talking to the actual users in person.
Before we were talking a little bit about your team. Bombardier operates in various countries and employs people from diverse cultural backgrounds. And I was wondering, how do you navigate those multicultural aspects of working in a diverse team?
Right. When you say culturally diverse, I think it's less about language barriers, but it's more about sharing different opinions or skill sets. Because when they are hired, they already have some basic language skills. But then to share your ideas, I noticed that even among locals, among Canadians, they sometimes struggle to share or exchange their ideas and thoughts. So yes, it's about language, but it's not because of where you are from, but it's really about how you frame your ideas and then present it to others. So I usually try to be very direct about my thoughts, questions, but I think also I need to pay attention to the way I transfer those messages to others. So that's why like being empathetic to others is very important. As much as you want to be direct, the other person might take your message differently. So you always need to be open about completely different feedback. Yeah.
My last question that I have is, what in your opinion is going to be the future of the aviation supply chain, and how do you see your role as a design lead?
I know many of us have wondered if our jobs will be one day replaced by AI as a product designer, right? Like I always hear, why do we even need product designers when there is a business team and a development team? It's a fair question, but I think the product designer's role is crucial. And when I say that, because right now in aviation, as much as we want to introduce digital solutions, people are still used to working in their old way of communications. Sometimes when the aircraft is in a really critical conditions, phone calls are faster than ordering parts online. And you have to admit that, I think. However, with like the advancement of data and then development in data quality, I think there will be a time when the technology will be more and more coming into our like aviation industry more than right now. And in that case, someone like UX product designers have to decide how to take all those data and implement it into the actual working environment. Because like I said, people are used to the old technology. So how do we bring those new technology into the environment and make sure that people won't be overwhelmed by the new solutions? And also, I think the technology could be coming in various ways. Even in maintenance environment, they are already using the VR headset to be able to identify the details that usually it's very difficult to reach by a human. I think we always have to be ready to adapt to the new technology or yet to be invented ones. But the core will be the same again. You have to understand the user needs and keep finding innovative ways to meet the user needs, no matter how the tools or context evolve.
Manami Izawa, thank you for your time today. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this podcast or have any feedback, please leave a message. I wish you all the best in your journey, and thank you for listening.